Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Right
Hi.
now, it is Throwback Thursday book edition. So, what were some of your teachers' favorite books when they were in third grade? So, Miss Chastain's favorite book when she was in third grade was Beezus and Ramona.
Miss Sandozeki's favorite book when I was in third grade was, and all my kids know, is Magic Tree House, and it was number 3, Mummies in the Morning. I loved it.
Good choice.
Miss Davis's favorite book when she was in third grade was Mrs. Pigglewiggle.
I love those. Have you all read any of those? If not, you definitely should. They are great books.
All right, it is time for our read aloud. We will be reading chapter 1 of Introduction to Ecology, our small reader for Unit 11. Please follow along with us.
But first, we need to go over our vocabulary. So I'm going to say the vocabulary word. You're going to repeat the vocabulary word, and then I'm going to tell you what the word means. So the first word is ecology.
Ecology.
The study of relationships between living things and their environment. That brings us to the next word, which is environment.
Environment.
And that is our natural surroundings. If you're talking about more than one, then the word is environments. An ecosystem.
Ecosystem
Is everything in a particular environment, both living and non-living. Organism.
Organism.
A living thing. Depend on.
Depend on.
To rely on or need. Survival.
Survival.
The ability to continue living. Pollen.
Pollen.
A yellow substance made by plants that is carried to other plants of the same kind to make seeds. Survive.
Survive.
To continue living. Skitter.
Skitter.
To move quickly across something. Sprout.
Sprout.
To begin to grow.
Chapter 1, Living Things and Their Habitats. Ecology is about nature and life. It is about the relationships between living things and their environment. Someone who studies ecology is an ecologist. An ecologist studies living things in the way they relate to their surroundings. This toad, look in the picture right there, this toad is part of an ecosystem. An ecosystem is like a habitat where an organism lives, but it includes many habitats plus the non-living systems that support them. In an ecosystem, each living thing depends on other living and non-living things for survival. Insects find shelter and food on trees and in moss. The toad finds those insects and eats them. The toad depends on rainfall to supply a place to lay eggs. One day, maybe a snake will eat the toad. These are the kinds of things ecologists like to think about. And let's read the caption on the next page. This toad is part of an ecosystem.
The bee is attracted to the flower's bright color. The bee eats the flower's sweet nectar. The flower is also full of pollen. Pollen is a substance that looks like dust. When the bee buzzes off, it carries some of the flower's pollen away on its feet and wings. To make seeds, flowers must share their pollen with other flowers. Flowers do not have hands or feet or any way to get their pollen to other flowers, so they depend on bees and other insects to spread it for them. The bee needs the flower in order to survive. The flower needs the bee and other insects in order to survive. These are perfect examples of the kind of relationships ecologists like to study. Let's read the caption. The bee needs the flower in order to survive.
Here is another living thing you probably recognize, a squirrel. She is a little surprised to see you. This squirrel does not see people every day. She is not one of those squirrels you see skittering along branches in the park or your backyard. Instead, this squirrel lives deep in the forest. She has a nest of leaves and sticks somewhere way up in this tree. In the springtime, the mother squirrel shared her nest with her babies. But now it is late summer. The babies have left the nest. The mother has the nest to herself. It is time for her to gather food for the winter. Let's read the caption. This squirrel is surprised to see you.
This squirrel's favorite food is acorns, which are nuts from oak trees. In the summer, it is easy for the squirrel to go out and find plenty of acorns. But the squirrel must also gather and save food for winter. In the winter, acorns won't be so easy to find. The squirrel uses her little paws to dig a hole in the ground. She buries an acorn. Over the summer and early fall, she may bury hundreds of them. Then, whenever she gets hungry during the winter, she can crawl out of her nest and go dig up an acorn. It is easy to see how the squirrel depends on the tree. She uses the tree for both food and shelter. However, the squirrel also gives something to the tree. How do you think the squirrel remembers where she buried all those acorns? Can she smell them? Does she put a little stick in the ground to mark each acorn? Does she draw a map on the back of a leaf? Actually, she does not remember where she planted all those acorns. She forgets a lot of them. Many of those acorns will remain in the ground right where she buried them. Let's read the caption. Acorns are nuts from oak trees.
Acorns are nuts. Nuts are seeds with shells covering them. Like most seeds, acorns need to be planted in order to sprout and grow. Well, the squirrel did the oak tree a favor by planting all those acorns and then forgetting about them. If the acorns weren't buried, they probably would not sprout and might be eaten by another animal. The squirrel and the oak tree are each doing what they do to survive and produce young. The tree grows leaves and acorns. The squirrel uses the leaves for shelter and the acorns for food. This makes it possible for the squirrel to survive and produce young. Also, because the squirrel buries acorns, the oak tree is able to produce young too. This is how things work in an ecosystem. This is what ecology is all about. Let's read the caption. Like most seeds, acorns need to be planted in order to sprout and grow.
Okay, here are some follow-up questions. I'm going to read them to you, and then I want you to pause and try to answer them yourself, and then come back and find out what the answers are, okay? And check and see if you're right. The first question, what is the main idea of this chapter? Is it A, living things depend on each other? B, toads eat insects? C, ecologists like to study? D, flowers like bees to sniff their petals? So be thinking about that one. And then number 2, what would happen to oak trees if suddenly there were no more squirrels? So pause.
Welcome back. I think it's A.
Let's see.
Woo!
It's
Good
A.
job.
Yay. And then the second one, what would happen to oak trees if suddenly there were no more squirrels? What do you think would happen?
There would be a lot more acorns on those trees.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe the acorns wouldn't be buried.
Yeah. If there were no more squirrels, oak trees would have a lot more acorns left on them, and the acorns would never get buried.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Teamwork.
Okay, and so our last thing, this whole unit, we're going to keep a junior ecologist journal. So your first journal entry, we want you to do 3 things. We want you to summarize living things and their habitats, which was that chapter we just read. If you need to go back and pause the video and read the pages again yourself, that is a great thing to do. And then number 2, as an ecologist, choose an example of a relationship between a living thing and its habitat they would like to study. So think back to, we just told you about a relationship between a living thing, a squirrel, and its habitat. Think about what we just read about. And last but not least, based on what you have read, what else do you think ecology may cover? Include questions you may have as an ecologist. So that is it for our Read Aloud today. Keep that journal, draw a picture with it, and we will see you next week. Love and knit to you. Bye.